Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I chat with actor Mike Cabellon from NBC's hit comedy series Mr. Mayor. Mike plays Chief Strategist Tommy Tomás on the show, opposite Ted Danson and Holly Hunter. Mike can also be seen on shows including Orange is the New Black, High Maintenance, and Crashing, as well as guest appearances on New Amsterdam and Luke Cage. We discuss his work with the award-winning Story Pirates, a nationally renowned group of top comedians, musicians, and best-selling authors who create exciting content celebrating the imagination of children, as well as Mike's own web series work with his comedy troupe and his love for sketch comedy in general. It's a really fun interview, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, Mike.
How's it going?
Going great. Thank you so much for making time today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I just got to start watching season 2 of Mr. Mayor along with everybody else, which, I mean, after Good Place ended, I know we were all looking for where Ted Danson would get to go next and then heard about this show they were going to build around him. What I didn't expect in season 1 is that the joy of the show for me is really the ensemble of it. I think a lot of us went into it going, oh, there's star power, you got Ted Danson there. Can you talk a little bit about gelling with an actor that I don't know about you, but I would be a little bit, I've met Ted Danson once. It was really hard to get out the question that I needed to ask. Can you talk a little bit about forming this comedic ensemble with an actor that it might be easy to feel standoffish around?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I too was a big Good Place fan, and while I was watching it, I did not think that, by the time it ended, I would be ready to be on Ted Danson's next show, and I think that to Ted's credit, it would have been very easy for him to do another show where, he was sort of the big dog. I mean, if you listen to interviews with the Good Place cast, they refer to themselves as the babies, it's just a lot of actors with not as many credits as Kristen Bell and Ted Danson. And so for him to step up and say, I'll do a show of, Holly Hunter and Bobby Moynihan, it was a dream team. And for someone like me, who is, kind of a baby, it's really intimidating to step into that and be like, okay, I have to be on equal footing with these people that I've idolized for my entire life. But they couldn't have made it any easier. I think to their credit, they kind of put down my defenses immediately from day one. Everyone was so nice and so receptive, and really made me feel like I, deserve to be there. It like, on top of just being a nice person, it also sort of assuaged my personal imposter syndrome about what, surely they made a mistake. I don't belong on the show, but, getting to play with them every day and learn from them and work with them has been a real blessing.
I mean, beyond just the sheer star power of Ted Danson and Holly Hunter, I was excited about this show just for being the next thing that Vella Lavelle was going to get to do after Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. She was such a joy to discover on my screen. And I love the rapport, particularly that your characters have, especially in the first season when everybody's trying to get used to this new mayor and how things are done. Watching season 2, I was really struck by how just back it felt. I really felt like the ensemble has like you laid the groundwork correctly in season 1, so that it just kind of felt like stepping back into this thing. Was there that sense for you? Did it feel odd to have to pick it back up, or were there particular things that y'all did that you felt made that camaraderie work?
I'll tell you what really helped, and this is, I wouldn't wish a plague upon anyone, but one of the silver linings of the pandemic was it struck right as we started filming season 1, and so our cast spent a lot of time texting each other and setting up Zoom calls. And as the pandemic wore on, it just really bonding as a cast in a way that I think a lot of casts don't get to do until, you're on season 4 or season 5. But we would kind of just digitally hang out for the entire pandemic. So by the time we came back to shooting season 1, it was the rapport between us was way stronger, and we felt very comfortable around each other. And then season 1 was still kind of, we had to work within certain protocols. This was pre-vaccine, so, we did what we could. But coming back for season 2, everyone was vaccinated. Everyone felt safe coming back to work. And we also had those strong emotional bonds from just checking in with each other for a year and a half and being really real with each other. And so I think that what you're seeing on screen is a function of the fact that, like, I think we became really good friends and really close to each other in a really short amount of time.
Yeah, there's it's really narrow little bitty silver linings on all of this.
Yeah, very small silver linings.
But I don't think I'd ever considered the effect of trauma bonding over a pandemic on my favorite sitcoms. That's great. Can you talk a little bit about the audition process? I know so often that has to be something that you just do and then never think about again because you don't know if you're going to get it and you've just got to move on. Did you have a sense of what you were going for? Was it kept secret? How did the audition process work?
The audition process was interesting. I knew that for them on their side, it was sort of a long process because it was not a secret. I knew what I was going in for. And I had friends who had gone in for the same role like months before I did. So I kind of knew that they were still looking. They didn't know what they were looking for. And like you said, as an actor, you kind of go into most auditions with the mentality of like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to throw it away in my mind immediately because that's the only way to survive in this industry. And so when I was going in for my first round audition, I remember thinking, look, they don't know what they're looking for. All I can do this, if they don't know what they're looking for, there's nothing to aim for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a script and you're looking at it, you're like, oh, I know what they want. They want, a Robert De Niro impression. So I'm going to do that. And this one, I was like, well, they don't know what they want. So I'm just going to be me. And I also had the history of like being a huge fan of Tina Fey and Robert Carlock's work. I watched Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. I watched 30 Rock. So I was like, I know sort of their pace and their tone. There's a certain cadence to their jokes. So I can kind of mold myself into that. But beyond that, I don't know I don't know what they're looking for in the character. So I'll just be me. And so I did that. And I did it at that, really rapid Tina Fey, Robert Carlock pace. And then by the time I got to my screen test, I was like, again, my imposter syndrome kicked in. I was like, surely this is a mistake. Like, I don't belong here. And I know there's no way I'll book this role because I was looking around the room. There are other, famous, more talented actors than I am in that room. And I was like, well, it's not going to go to me. But at the very least, I will have gotten to say, I got to do this. And it'll make a fun story. I will have met Ted Danson once. And at that point, they'd already cast Bobby Moynihan. I was like, I will have gotten to audition in a scene with Bobby Moynihan.
Yeah.
And so that was my attitude going into screen test day. And I just, with screen test, so they were testing for my role, for Bella LaBelle's role, and for Kyla Kennedy's role all on the same day. So there was just, a couple dozen actors in a room on the Universal lot, and they would bring us in pairs and trios and try different combinations. So you end up doing the same scenes over and over again. And one thing that I think I have in my little tool belt is I have an improv sketch comedy background. And so, after doing the scene 2 or 3 times, I got bored and I just started, improvising. And because I had Bobby Moynihan there as a scene partner, and he has that same background, we just kind of fell into this rhythm of playing with each other every scene and changing it a little bit every time. And I've never talked to Tina and Robert about this, but I'd like to think that's part of what got me the role, was like being able to keep it fresh and still be funny take after take. But this is all with hindsight being 2020, but in the moment I was like, yeah, I'm doing my thing and this is fun. We'll see what happens. And then I was shocked when I got the call like a week or two later that I booked the role.
That's great. Yeah, you'd mentioned your improv background. I know you had done some work with Upright Citizens, and then you've also, of course, created a couple of series, Early to Rise and Night Crew. When it comes to themes you like to tackle, like you talked about the pace of a Carlisle Faye show, do you feel like, looking back on your own comedy, that you can see a theme or a style to what that's mine, that's what I like to do?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's always changing. I think it's important for artists to grow and change over time, but I think everyone else on the cast and crew would be horrified that I'm so open about this, but I'm so much younger than everyone else, that it's like, I like 30 Rock, I graduated from college, and that's, when you're crystallizing your comedic voice, and it was so influential on me, that pace of jokes was not foreign to me. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what I grew up watching. I mean, I'm not that young, but I kind of came of age in my comedic voice the same time 30 Rock was on. So it was sort of fused in my DNA. And when I look at my work, I get to see a lot of it, a lot of their voice in my work. And now that I'm older and I have a few more credits under my belt, your voice starts to pivot. And now I think it's especially important for me as an Asian American in Hollywood to try and focus a lot more of my stories on that. But my love of certain things, my love of like that pace of jokes, that level of like cerebralness to their jokes. I think their jokes are very, very smart. And I love that. And never at the expense of like, they're also open to like wacky physical bits, which I think, the character gets to engage in a lot. And so I think a lot of their voices influence my voice. But I find that as I get older, I'm trying to fuse that into things that are important to me, and also another big thing is like, I also grew up on like action movies. So, Early to Rise and Night Crew are both really heavy, like sci-fi series. And I love that genre element. And so that, these are all like ingredients in the pot that like, as I get older, I hope to kind of keep playing with.
Yeah. I realized several years ago, going to see a movie with a bunch of friends that I like horror comedy. I like comedy. It's the chocolate in my peanut butter. Like I want it blended in to everything. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, at least for me, it doesn't take away from the sci-fi. It doesn't take away from the horror element of it.
Makes it better.
Yeah. And so I love to see these things blended. One thing that always strikes me on sitcoms where I can really feel the showrunner or the writer voice, like you said, that Faye Carlock kind of thing, is how often an ensemble of actors almost has to move with the show. Like the Deadwood actors all kind of stayed together, it seemed like, for a little while there, or kept turning up in build shows. And there's just something about, okay, I found the 10 people who can say this patter the way I want it. And and I felt like you, along with Vella, some of the other cast that I hadn't seen in a Faye show before, just snapped into it and fit so well. Were there, I know that fit with your comedy thing. Did you ever have moments in season 1 where you just thought, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to make this scene work?
Oh, absolutely. I remember our director on the pilot, because, the pace at which Tina and Robert write, the scripts end up being way longer. You watch a broadcast television half hour and you get 22 and a half minutes, and at roughly a page a minute, should be a 22, 23 script. And Robert and Tina's scripts come in at like 30 something. And so you're like, okay, it's a lot of material you got to press down. And I remember our director on the pilot was like, I'd like everybody to pace up. And then he looked at me and he said, except for you need to slow down. I was so just scared and jittery and wired that I was like, okay, I have to barrel through all of this. And it was like talking so fast that like the jokes weren't landing because you couldn't understand what I was saying. So in a weird way, yeah, my way of slotting into that rhythm and that cadence was slowing down and learning how to not just get the words out, but also land the joke at the same time. But I'd like to think I'm doing an okay job.
One other show that you've gotten to be part of that every time I see an actor come up on it, I just have to ask what the experience was like. High Maintenance is one of my favorite things I think I've ever seen on film. It's up there with Atlanta for me of just mind-blowing television that's kind of about nothing and kind of about everything and just looks really great to shoot. Can you talk a little bit about getting to do your High Maintenance episode? Was it I've heard people get on that show from, well, I loved it and I asked my friend and they said they were on it. I mean, all sorts of stories. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It is kind of like that. For a while it kind of became, there's that old line about how like every actor in New York ends up doing Law and Order at some point. And I think for every comedian in New York for a few years, High Maintenance was that, because High Maintenance cycled through so many characters that pretty much everyone in the, sort of UCB pit magnet sketch improv community was like, yeah, I did, a 5-line scene on High Maintenance. And it was a lot of fun. The casting director was great and kept bringing me in for different roles on the show. And it just so happened that was the role that hit for me. And the biggest thing I remember about that was it filmed right down the street from my apartment, because they film on location in so many different places. And I was fully prepared to have to travel to, some faraway borough, but it ended up being a 10-minute walk from my apartment. So I'd walk to and from work for that. And it was a lot of fun. That was another one where Ben really kind of let us
improvise and was like, you can kind of, here's the script, but you can play as much as you want. And so somewhere out there is, I don't want to say hours, it was a short scene, but minutes and minutes of footage of us just kind of messing around and doing things that are way off script. But they gave us that room to play, and that was a lot of fun.
That's great. And then before we wrap up, I want to ask about Story Pirates podcast. Anything that takes the ideas of kids and does anything with them is always just going to be absurd and wild and crazy. Can you talk a little bit about the genesis of the idea, what got you wanting to do Story Pirates, and what it's like to be doing that?
Yeah. So the genesis of it started way before my time. The company was started, 10, 15 years ago. And sort of just built up a reputation, both in New York and in LA. And I was in New York at the time. And, sort of like High Maintenance is one of the things where just like a certain caliber of comedian was always associated with Story Pirates. And so your interest gets piqued. And I fell in love with their mission. I think that every human has an innate desire to sort of help their fellow man. It's the same reason we volunteer at animal shelters and soup kitchens and whatnot. And this felt like a way that I could contribute and give back that was specific and unique to my own skill set. And so I joined, I fell in love, kept going, worked my way up into, working on the podcast. And it's a trip. It never gets old. It's so fun because, you take the ideas of kids, and kids don't have a book of tropes in their head. I mean, they do. They're fed certain tropes, of course. The boys like superheroes and the girls like, mermaids. But when you really just take an extra minute and push a kid to come up with something from their imagination, it will never, ever get. It will always be the most insane thing you've ever heard. And then the fun professional challenge is to say, okay, how do I make this cohesive that I can tell as a story to fellow human beings in a way that's going to make them laugh? And so I love it, and I hope to never stop doing it.
That's great. That's great. I've long ago in college, I got to work with kind of an aftercare, what do kids do after school? Here's an art program. Mm-hmm. And we were supposed to do a fairy tale, help them make a play, and I just let the kids write it. I had no idea what I was in for when we read them like 24 fairy tales and then just let the kids blend them however they wanted.
Right.
And I remember all the parents going, well, that made no sense. What I'm like, no, your kids wrote it. It's not, I know it makes no sense. I didn't stop them.
Yeah. Well, and try and do things like, when we're doing the adaptation stage of things, it's always like, well, let's honor the kids' intent, but we do want to also make this a story. So let's maybe dial up some things for the sake of giving the main character some stakes, or giving them an obstacle, giving them a reason to want the thing that they want. And I think that that's sort of important because we never invent anything. It's always sort of just reading between the lines and really saying what was the kid trying to say here? What were they trying to accomplish? And sort of taking them seriously. I think a lot of times with children's media, we kind of talk down to kids. We write down to kids. And it's like, I really think that, in terms of the things that are important to storytelling, emotions and stakes, kids understand all of that, and it's all there in their writing. So it's really just a matter of like taking them seriously as an author and saying, what were they trying to say here?
Is there anything in particular in season 2 that you had fun doing on Mr. Mayor that we can look forward to?
I don't know when this will come out, but at time of recording, next week I'm really excited because it's a big stunt work episode for me, which is something I don't have a lot of experience with, but to get to work with a stunt coordinator and, use my body to sell jokes instead of, I think a lot of my character specifically is like a verbal joke character. It's a lot of stand and talk, and that's what's funny. And so to be able to like do things physically was like really exciting for me as an actor, and I'm really excited for people to see it.
Well, I can't wait to see you either fall over or get hit by something or whatever's going to happen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking to me about it all today. I really appreciate it. And folks can catch Mr. Mayor coming out week to week right now. And I recommend everybody do it. Thank you again.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/tvdudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.